O'clock. We'll call the meeting to order. Mrs. Wirtz, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The records show all board members present, except for Mrs. Dickman. She is absent this evening. Mr. Board, has public notice been given?
Yes, it has.
It's on to agenda item 3, public comments. Public comment procedures. If there is anyone wishing to address the board tonight, please take a moment to fill out the registration form prior to public comment being started. Per policy 0167.3, anyone wishing to participate in the period of public comment must be a resident of the Richland School District, the parent or legal guardian of an enrolled district student, or an enrolled district student. Persons wishing to participate must physically be present at the meeting and must register in advance. A total time allotment of 30 minutes will be given for public comments. Each participant shall be given 3 minutes to address the board. A translator may be used to translate verbal communication to the board. If translation services are used, 6 minutes shall be given to that participant, with only the first 3 minutes being designated to the total time allotment. Speakers are not permitted to make inflammatory comments, use inappropriate language or gestures, attack specific persons, or make a specific person the subject of their remarks. Please see policy 0167.3 for a complete list of requirements and restrictions. If a person is unable to adhere to these rules, they may be directed to end their comments. We do not have any sheets, and is there anyone wishing to address the board? Seeing none, on to agenda item 4, reports. The district administrator's report.
Okay, so several announcements here. One, just a reminder to the board that the Wisconsin State Education Convention is held in Milwaukee, January 17th through the 19th. Laura Steele will need to know if you are planning to attend so that we can get your hotel rooms and conference registration taken care of. The early deadline for registration so that the school can get a discount, I believe, is December 1st. So if you could let her know your intentions for either all or some or none of the conference, and we would welcome you to be able to be there for whatever you could be there for. Please let her know maybe before Thanksgiving, if we could, and then we can get our rooms released so that others can grab it and get your registration taken care of. The Delegate Assembly meeting is held on Wednesday, which is January 17th down there. Mrs. Wirtz is our Delegate Assembly. My understanding is you will not be able to attend.
Correct, and Sheila, I talked to her, and she can.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we will have that, and then you would, the pre-delegate assembly would be on that Tuesday night as well, okay? And we can make travel arrangements together. And then moving on to the rest of this week and up to Thanksgiving, we have our Buildings, Property, and Transportation Committee and our Personnel Committee this Thursday, the 16th. Those committees will be held at the intermediate school. Personnel will start at 6 o'clock, and Buildings and Property will start at 7:15, and that will conclude with a tour of that facility. And then finally, just a reminder to all of our staff and our students and families that there is an early release for our students and staff on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. Wednesday, November 22nd will be an early release day, and our staff will be free to go as soon as students have departed from the district. Any questions from the board on any of those?
Is the meeting going to be in the IMC at the intermediate school on Thursday?
The meeting will be in the IMC at the intermediate school.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
4B, board member reports.
Curriculum met on November 2nd, and we reviewed the partner school. We received an update. Things seem to be going really well at the partner school. They meet, I think, daily to go over, they have daily goals, they meet once a week. They're kind of using this first year to look at budget plans for that school, but overall things seem to be going really well. We reviewed the policy 5410 promotion, placement, and retention status and reminders as it pertains to communication to families. And then there was, the bulk of the meeting was spent on the high school course description guide. There was a lot of really good work that's been done. And that's going to come back to the committee in December with the goal of students seeing it in January. Then we did review some data on iReady and CERT. And lastly, we got a brief update on the progress of the 23-24 goals and priorities, but that'll be coming to the full board later in November.
The policy committee also met on November 2nd. We as well looked over policy 5410. That follows state statutes, but we just need to make sure that the communication is out there for the families. We also started a conversation about policy 7250, which is commemoration of school facilities, essentially naming rights. We are gathering more information to start working on that, or we'll have to have some formal process to be able to apply for potential naming of different parts of our facilities. And then the bulk of their conversation was about the NEOA board review of policies, reviewing the policies, going through another chunk of those to make sure everything is up to date on our side with the recommendations from NEOA to make sure we're matching state statutes and all the legal things, and then obviously having our twist of what we need for our schools. And then discuss policy 1400, job description revision, which we will be acting on this evening.
Thank you. 4C, Nexus Facility Assessment Report.
Okay, let's see, misspelling the agenda there. It's not an assessment, it's an assessment. While Ellie and Brian are getting prepared, Ellie and Brian are from Nexus, I'll just give the board and public kind of a brief update on where we're at and what we're looking to accomplish tonight and what we will need moving forward. So if you remember, back in June of this past year, we entered into an agreement with Nexus to do a complete facility assessment study of our district. We had a study done back in 2020, I believe it was 2020, and then COVID hit, inflation hit, and so obviously prices are no longer valid. And so we needed to do an assessment of where we're at. The district has been using defeasance as a way to stabilize the mill rate at $9.12, with anticipation of at some point in the future we would be needing to go to some sort of referendum, both operational and capital. And so by holding the mill rate at 9.12, what could we do to be able to have little or no tax increase? And so when Nexus came in to do their facility assessment, they spoke at the Buildings and Property Committee meeting in October, and at the end of their assessment, they talked about a few different options that the board had, just to give the board, the committee at that point, and now to the board, just to give you folks an idea of what can you get for $9.12, right? And what does that look like? So that you have some sort of scope of work, so that you understand what does $20 million actually get us? What does $30 million get us? What does an operational referendum get? This is specifically on tonight's agenda as a report, specifically so that we do not take any action tonight, okay? The idea here is that you get to hear the information from what our facility assessment the report is, what are some possible options moving forward, and then the idea would be to place it on the 27th agenda for potential action. That action at that time would not necessarily be, are we going to referendum or not? The action that we may have to take action on at the end of November would be if we wanted to conduct a survey using the survey group that Ellie and Brian will talk about, Leatherman Group, to be able to do a survey to our community in December, right? In order for them to be able to do that survey in December, then we would have to take action in November. And they would have to do it in December so that then we could gather the information, and if we were targeting an April 2024 referendum, the board would have to take action on adopting a resolution in mid-January. I believe January 22nd would be the day that we would have to do that. So that's kind of the timeline that we're on. If, and this is an if we are looking to go to referendum in April. If we are choosing to go in November or at a later point in time, I can talk to you about what the financial implications will be and where we're at a later point. I would just need to know. But tonight is purely an informational session so that you can digest this, have a couple weeks. Let's get your questions answered, and then decide if we want to go to a survey in December. That's really where we're at. So tonight, at the end of this, when Brian and Ellie are done with the options, these are just going, they're going to present, I don't remember exactly, 3 to 4 different options of several dozen that we talked about. These are not chiseled in stone by any sense of the imagination, okay? This is just kind of giving you an idea of what does this get you, right? So if you have questions about the facility assessment, tonight would be the night to ask them. Well, we have the experts here that did that. If you have questions about specifics about a referendum, this is probably not the time to have those questions, right? General questions about timeline, I'm happy to answer. Those questions should be brought forward on the 27th when we have our next meeting. But the information that you need to know, like in order for me to make a decision, I would need to know this, 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 and this. Those are things you should be communicating with me so I can get that information to you. Am I making sense here? So facility questions, let's get those answered. Specific questions about any of the plans, if you have clarifying questions, absolutely, totally appropriate to answer those tonight or ask those tonight. But as we get into the, I don't want to get into the weeds about a referendum because this really isn't listed for any kind of action. This is really just a report. Okay? Okay. With that, I believe I have prefaced for Ellie and Brian to come on up. Are we good, or are we having tech issues?
10 more seconds, then we're good.
We couldn't get it to run here, so we're running, I'm joining the Zoom, so it'll show.
And you're just going to share your screen as a
Yes.
as a Zoom person. Okay. Yeah, just so the public and board members know, I wasn't able to get the presentation uploaded to the board docs as well, so we'll get that converted to a PDF and then get that uploaded so the public has access to it as well. But having some issues with the class, so it's a lot of good information. It is going to be 45 to 60 minutes, so try to stay engaged and go through this. We want to make sure that you get all of the information to make a good decision as we move forward. So.
All right. Well,
Take it away.
thank you so much for having us. Sorry
No,
about
mic
that.
up there.
Yep.
Button, yep.
Just what do I do? Just leave it? Oh, okay, got it. Yes, as Steve mentioned, I'm Ellie Gilliam. I have Brian Winterly here with me. So we will, and some of you have seen this, there's a few new slides in here, but we'll try and go through it as quick as possible, but there is a lot of information in here. So I'll kind of go through the planning process. A quick thing, we did a staff survey, so we'll look at some of the staff survey insights that came out of it. And then Brian will go into the facility condition assessment and educational adequacy, and then talk about potential next steps. So honestly, I probably used this slide way back when, I first met with you guys, but basically, we really like to start by listening. These are your buildings. You guys are the ones that spend the time, the children spend the time here. They're not our buildings. So we want to listen and find out the needs. And from that, Brian has spent a lot of time, talking to principals, talking to staff members, and just finding out where you kind of are headed. And then from there, we come in and assess the buildings. So we bring in subject matter experts, okay? So we'll bring in, a civil engineer for the parking lots and roofing for the, we brought in subject matter experts. So the budget numbers that you would get are very good numbers. And then, but go through everything, looking at flooring, lighting, everything from the rooftops to the grass tops. And then also look at how we can update the building. That's what educational adequacy means. Update the building to today's learning. So, a lot of your primary and intermediate especially, they're older buildings, so how can they be updated to bring them up to today's standards? And then now we're kind of at the solving stage. So working with you, we have all kinds of different options. What's the right solution for your district? So that's kind of next steps, is working to figure that out. And then if you decide to go to referendum, we communicate all that. We help with as much or as little as you want. And then in the end, we would help you implement that with the engineering, the architecture, and construction management. All right. So kind of met back with Steve back in February, kind of presented the concept really, did a preliminary building audit, I walked through all 3 of the buildings, and then presented that to the Buildings, Property, and Transportation Committee, as well as the school board. And then, as Steve mentioned, back in June, you decided to move forward. So the comprehensive facility assessment started in July and kind of has gone through, even today, really. So gathered staff input, looked at everything in the buildings, developed options. We have conceptual floor plans and conceptual budgets that you will see. And next, after at the end, we'll present the report to you and then help you prioritize your needs as well as develop the financial solutions. So the staff survey was taken between October 4th and 11th. 71 people responded to it, which is about a 34% participation rate. And as you'll see as we move forward, the ratings are between 0 and 100. So I kind of broke it out between the 3 buildings. Really, green is good and red is bad. And so honestly, okay, that does not show nearly as well as it does on my screen. I'm like, they all look kind of yellow. You can kind of see down at the primary, indoor air quality kind of stands out with the 45. Some of the other lower ones, just functional spaces came in lower, so you don't have a lot of breakout spaces, one-on-one spaces, large group instruction, that type of thing. And then furniture came in one of the lower ones as well. But honestly, I've seen scores as low as 8 or 9. So overall, your buildings are in really good shape. They came out, the staff is pretty happy. And you'll see, honestly, the top one on there, you can't see it as obvious on my screen. Safety came in the highest, which is fantastic. You want everyone to feel safe and secure when they're in the buildings, and that one scored very, very high with the staff. So these are just some of the satisfactory comments that came out. So warm and welcoming atmosphere when you walk in the building, that's at the primary. Field house is fantastic, as well as the library at the high school. Primary, again, welcoming outside entry and offices. At the intermediate, they're really happy with the school surroundings. The high school has beautiful architecture with great views. Intermediate, greatly appreciate the room and the rooms that have air conditioning. And the primary loves the green spaces. And then some improvement comments. At the high school, better sound dampening and lighting, as well as the outside doorways are rusted. There are some exterior doors that need some work. And also the parking lots. Those are some of the high school comments. At the intermediate, they don't like the parking, so that's something that we've taken a look at, as well as the bathrooms are old and dingy. And the primary, they want to update the toilets by the workroom, as well as there are areas that are hard to hear the announcements, so the PA system's not working as well as it should. So with that, I will hand it over to Brian.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for having us tonight. As Ellie mentioned, we looked at everything inside and outside your buildings. This kind of just shows you graphically that, yeah, we looked at the site, we were up on your roofs, we looked at walls and windows and doors, and then all the things you really don't get to see, everything in, above the ceilings, and a thorough audit of your finishes of each building. Looking at, we can look at things, but then we also take staff, buildings and grounds, custodial, and teacher input into account. So that usually it helps us understand if something's a constant maintenance issue, or if something was recently replaced because it was an issue, things of that nature. So, and then we also just look at how many years left does that piece of equipment or finish have left. Starting at the primary school, each page will have a different discipline referenced. So here is mechanical and plumbing. We looked at adding antifreeze to your heating water system, so if the power ever fails, you don't have a water leak. Updating your air handlers that are old, outdated, filtration, hard to access, and just much needed replacement. Adding air conditioning, building throughout. Adding split systems to the data rooms, because those will operate 24/7, even when the rest of the buildings may be not needing cooling. And then lastly, retro-commissioning any of your systems that are in good enough condition, but really just trying to tie the building controls and the equipment together so that people are happy, satisfied, and you're not spending extra energy. Electrical, the power infrastructure, panels, etc. are original to most of the building. Adding emergency generator, there is not one there right now. Looked at updating a fire alarm system with an IP addressable system so the fire department can locate people faster. We also looked at adding outlets in the older sections of the buildings. They were built before computers were in vogue, so and devices, Chrome one-to-one devices, that really wasn't foreseen back when the building was built. Updating your fiber, updating your card access, as well as adding cameras to maybe some blind spots in the building. And then lastly, interior lighting, replacement upgrade to LED fixtures. There are some 1991 wood windows that are inefficient, hard to operate, and the wood is starting to degrade on the windows. That's typical here and at the intermediate school. Some older doors that the steel doors just rust with ice and salt and should be replaced, and then some minor exterior wall tuck pointing, cracking, things of that nature that should be upgraded. Civil site improvements. There is a couple areas that we focused on, the visitor parking to the south, as well as the southwest playground. Those two areas in green you'll see are two areas that are noted and budgeted to be replaced. They're beyond the crack sealing and seal coating that you would normally do to maintain your asphalt systems. Some sidewalk curb concrete repairs, adding inlets to any downspouts that normally would discharge the grade. Replacing some fencing that some trees have fallen on and just, they're due to be replaced. And then some miscellaneous walkway and culvert maintenance. Finishes. The next slide will show some plans that'll detail out by system, so flooring, ceilings, lockers, cubbies, etc. The area, what type of ceiling or flooring system it is, and when it's due to be replaced, so that'll give you a good idea for the next 20 years. You can forecast out your maintenance needs for finishes, and some toilet room upgrades that Ellie kind of touched on, some things that usually need to be updated, finished, or just need to be brought into ADA compliance. So here this details all the ceilings. So this is your floor plan, and then color-coded by ACT's acoustic ceiling tile. JIP is just the drywall system. Exposed structure that won't have a ceiling. And then the vinyl face tile is just like a lay-in style tile, but it's got a vinyl face instead of an acoustical treatment to it. And then the spline system in the gym is the only one that we are looking at replacing right now, just due to age, aesthetics, etc. Flooring, a lot of different flooring types. Hopefully, after some time, you guys can consolidate and come to a standard on, is it the VCT is an older style, the clay tile, and the LVT is the luxury vinyl tile that's becoming more and more prominent. And really, we were just focusing on the broadloom carpet, that rolled carpet product, like, and this is carpet tile, but anything where it's a rolled product is hard to replace in kind. So carpet tile, if you were to replace that, you can replace sections of tile one at a time if it gets stained or ripped, etc. Doors, lockers, casework. Some of it is hard to see if you don't have the electronic version, but the bathrooms are all shown for ADA compliance and finishes. There are sections of the lockers and benches, shelving in the hallways, which are due to be replaced due to age. The lockers are usually due to either rusting or hard to get parts for. At the intermediate school, this is almost identical to the primary, adding antifreeze to the heating water system, replacing older air handlers that would be hard to add cooling to and are leakage issues. Replace or adding air conditioning to the entire building, not just the center section of the 91 building. Replacing galvanized piping, some of it is buried, some of it might go away if the lower section is no longer used by the locker rooms. And then the retro-commissioning I talked about before. This is the same scope, different pictures, different areas. They kind of have the same issues going on. Older power infrastructure, especially if you were to add air conditioning, that would have to be replaced anyways. This building does not have a generator. The fire alarm system is in the same condition as the primary. And then all those other items are about the same, adding outlets, replacing lighting, and updating your low voltage and fiber systems. Quite a few more exterior doors here that have to be replaced. The wood windows, again, in 1991 when the additions were built, those wood windows are due to be replaced. Exterior wall maintenance, sometimes when you see a little bit of the grout being removed. You really want your grout intact. That keeps the bricks intact and keeps walls from crumbling. And then some miscellaneous soffit coping, downspout repair, either missing or dented or just aged. The south entrance, the asphalt replacement is listed there, as well as some more ADA correction side curbing like the primary, catching those downspouts if they continue to discharge to grade. Eventually grade wears away and it'll start impacting the foundations of the building. To the west or above the school on this picture, that aqua section, you've got 2 or 3 sheds over there, and replacing the asphalt leading to that is grouped into one project, and then showing the different fields around. We had different measures to upgrade the fields, whether it's sodding, goalposts, etc. Those are all detailed out. Finishes, some different ceiling replacements. The maps will look different because of the building in different areas. That lower right picture, you see some stained, that's that spline ceiling that's adhered to the bottom of the structure. Different lockers that are to be replaced, and quite a few more toilets here than at the primary school. So here are the ceilings. That the 3 orange classrooms are the classrooms with that spline acoustic ceiling that's kind of fastened to it. Modernize it with the lay-in style ceiling. Flooring, again, that aqua broadloom carpet in the music, vocal, IMC, a couple classrooms in the offices. Just carpet just wears faster than 20 years, not much like the other products. Lockers, casework, all the bathrooms are shown needing to be brought up to ADA compliance. Even the ones in 1991 that were installed on that north section, those probably less, that's more of grab bars and other measures, but really it's turn radius for wheelchairs is usually what gets flagged. And then the doors to the gym, the 6 gym doors leading out, those get heavily used, and then the 6 leading out to the parking lot to the west, and then some lockers. So at the high school, again, adding glycol as a standard for the district. Once I started meeting with Brian and others, you as a district like to do everything across the board, which we really appreciate, not hodgepodge, and kind of standardize as a district. So adding cooling to there's a data room over by the auto lab that needs cooling, that overheats. You see pictures of the science exhaust fans and the welding hoods there that need to be replaced or improve the ventilation for students that are using the welding booths. Replacing some of the electric water coolers when COVID hit. A lot of them were turned off or not used as much, and because of that, they have started to fail. And I just used the one over here with the bottle filler. There's not even a spout for it. They were just kind of taken away due to COVID, so just replace those and add more bottle fillers. And then lastly, that retro commissioning I talked about before. With it being a newer building, the power infrastructure upgrades are more of TLC maintenance that should be provided for the systems, scanning panels for any loose connections, providing an arc flash study, so if somebody's working on the power panel, if it's a contractor, somebody with the district, they know the type of equipment they should be putting on before working on that equipment for their protection and really the school's protection as well. Replacing the generator that's shown in the lower right-hand corner. There's some systems on there that want to be added to. I believe it was the cooler freezer in the kitchen and some other systems that it's not large enough to accommodate, and it's probably a good idea to start planning for that replacement. Adding outlets, fiber we talked about before. Some camera additions to the gym, auditorium, lobby, and auditorium. Adding more card access, and again, the interior lighting replacement. Envelope, the middle section, so basically between the 2 rotunda areas, the district, you guys have already replaced everything with that, the ballasted roof section that they just basically put down rock to weight down the asphalt system. The other 2 sections have already been upgraded to adhered EPDM, that rubber roof that's put down. It'll last longer. Those rocks can puncture the rubber if somebody steps on that ballast. So that is the last section that is included in our measure in the kind of the center section of the building. And I think you guys were already going to do the tech ed, I think, next spring. So that's already been accounted for. Some minor window masonry sealant and repairs. Not a high priority, but again, it's noted and budgeted for that. And then there are quite a few exterior doors that are that steel product, and the upgrade would be an aluminum product or a fiberglass reinforced product. One of those 2 would be a great improvement over the steel, which can stick and rust and is a maintenance issue. Here, quite a few different, that picture in the lower right is not right, but I will upgrade that for when we give you an electronic version. But at the high school, there are quite a few sections that were due to be replaced for asphalt. You see that in the upper right-hand corner, so that asphalt replacement, really the bus lot has to be restriped, but all the other car parking areas should be replaced, and those drives you see in the upper right-hand corner. Concrete curbing paths where dumpsters are, where the loading dock is located, has to be upgraded. ADA path down to the track and extending it down to track and field. area in the stadium should be taken care of. Baseball field, there's numerous things that are listed in the report. Dugouts, drainage, some other things that, some fence posts that are heaving in the backfield, in the outfield, should be replaced. Also looked at an interior upgrade for the press box, converting your athletic lighting to LED, and also on here, we also have a measure for if you were to consider natural turf instead of, artificial turf instead of natural turf for your stadium. And then some Hornet Drive improvements, which are, it includes some lighting, some drainage issues, and replacing some of the low spots and extending asphalt to the maintenance building. At the high school, really not a lot here, but we'll go through it real quick. Wall finishes in anywhere where there was an acoustic panel, in music areas, practice areas. Those have been damaged over time, so those should be replaced to aesthetics, but also it loses the acoustic value if it's damaged. Anything that's been carpeted or the athletic rubber flooring takes a lot of wear and tear, so that should also be upgraded in the near future, as well as some miscellaneous casework, some locker areas, and then some toilet room countertops and lavatories. That upper picture right there shows that it's not a very robust system, and that's one thing that maintenance showed that it should be replaced very, very soon. So here are the walls. Anything with that painted wall and acoustic wall panel, that pink 0 to 5. 0 to 5 is immediate need. 5 to 10 is anything that's a medium priority, and then 10 to 20 is a very, very low priority, something you would look at for the next decade. Nothing for ceilings. Everything is at least 5 years out for replacement. Here's that flooring, anything in aqua, not the IMC, but there are a lot of other areas, all those other aqua colored areas, including the auditorium, are due to be replaced soon, just because the broad loom is just not it's not a carpet tile. And the rubber that you see in the adaptive PE and weight room to the kind of northeast corner of the building. Casework is those 2 classrooms this direction from the IMC. Those are shown in pink. And then anything in those bathroom areas also are pink as well. So I just covered everything that was under deferred maintenance. The educational adequacy is everything we covered once we started sitting down and having several meetings with the principals. We looked at, took a floor plan, principals marked it up, and then we got to understand how the building is being used, who's in what classrooms, how are they all grouped, what are some issues that the principals know either outside with morning or afternoon pickup drop-off, traffic flow. We looked at rooms, how many classrooms do you have, are they big enough in size, any safety security issues, areas where there's maybe gaps in cameras or doors that it would be nice to have card access added to, space types, adjacencies, any equipment in the spaces or infrastructure that might like to be added, namely power outlets to classrooms. Ellie talked about the furniture that kids are sitting in and using as much as they are their eyes on the smart board. So that's an important piece to look at as well. And then any environmental quality issues, if there was any programs or any PV, solar, et cetera, things like that sometimes come about from an educational standpoint. These scorecards, you're not meant to read them. You can look at them in the report, but really, green is good. Green is if we were to design it today. Yellow is anything that it's fine, nothing major needs to be done. Anything in red, it's not an emergency, but it's something that should be focused on if you were to remodel your building. So this is kind of the scorecard that we used when we sat down with the principals to understand, you know, working outside in, how does park pickup drop-off work? Anything in green, that's kind of the front office that was recently redone, that's, you know, no work there. And then some of the red areas, it's not that sometimes we can't even correct it if there's not a community space or parent room. Because you guys went from 5 buildings to 3, you're very efficient right now, so you don't have any extra classroom spaces. If there was one, then we would start looking at, does that want to be a community room, a parent room, a flexible space, a breakout room, project team room that people can use. So really, not a lot of red that we can't really, that we can, there's some areas we can improve, but really nothing major. So 2 of the things we heard was that getting buses off of the drive, the highway, are important, and also a need for more parking space. So we addressed that with 2 different areas. Kind of double loading buses onto this, and again, these are just concepts on paper. We budgeted for it. We're not ready to break ground or do a ribbon cutting, but these are just ideas that are meant to be, you know, thought about, talked about, and see if there's a better way to do it. By stacking the buses like this, we would have a kind of a concrete island with railings so that my children have gone to an elementary like this where it worked pretty well. It was buses and cars, but the same concept could apply with buses. You could get up to 10 buses in the current drive, and with railing, they could use the center walkway. Obviously, supervision has to apply, and common sense from bus drivers have to apply. But this is how you could get 10 buses onto that current drive when you've got a total of 18 coming in and out of that site every morning and afternoon. On the south side, adding kind of the area, the south half of that parking area is all shown to be new. The areas in blue is just stormwater retention areas. If you add any impervious asphalt, the DNR will require you to add storm retention areas, so that's just being shown for conceptual planning, budgeting, and layout, so we're aware that it needs to be done. And this is showing a parking crosswalk and pickup area that I think needs to be refined a little bit. I'm seeing that there's not much for crosswalk, safe travel from your car to the pickup area. But other than that, these are all budgeted and would obviously be refined way down the road after a referendum if that happens. So. I'm missing the floor plan on this building, but the things that I know we talked about were there is the sinking kindergarten classroom that we actually had structural come back today and say that there's quite a bit of repair that needs to be done in that the southwest corner of the property that has to be upgraded. Bathrooms need to be remodeled and expanded in different areas. Also, the second exit from the office we had talked about, expanding the kitchen storage. They're very light on storage in their building. What else? The music area, the gym, ceiling, and acoustics, and both of those, the 2 loudest areas need acoustical treatment. And there's a back old office area that we had an idea to expand for general building storage. Was one of the big concerns that Amy had shared. And we learned that it was also being used for testing. So part of it could be a larger storage area and then some smaller testing areas. So I apologize that that graphic is not in the PowerPoint. Here's the site we talked about. The intermediate school, again, not as much green, but the red areas, site traffic, where the traffic converges on the site is one thing that we heard, and that's obviously, we shared the concern that Lisa had shared with us about that, and Brian Jones. Security supervision of the lower level and how that's the locker rooms right now and how it's probably hard to supervise kids in a basement. So that was one thing we tried to look at and tried to help with. And then lastly, flexible learning spaces. Again, you don't have a lot of wiggle room, so if classrooms do open up over time, you could look at those flexible learning spaces. So here's the renovation for the intermediate school. As you come in the building, in the office area, let's see here, I can't quite get that, oh, I can. So as you come in, this back area where the nurse is, that was, sorry, right here. We wanted to introduce a door. Right now, the nurse does not have any privacy when she makes or takes calls or meets with a student. So adding that door would add that privacy and still allow you to have a second exit out of the building. All those areas in red are bathroom areas that are noted to be upgraded. There's a couple single-user toilets here, but the other ones are all multi-user toilets that would look to be upgraded. In the 91 section, everything on the left-hand side of the page is, there was a request for sinks to be added to the classrooms. Obviously with COVID, that became a bigger issue when you didn't have any hand washing in your classrooms. The only issue with that is that there's not any sanitary in the area. So if that measure was selected, a lot of the flooring in the hallway would have to be torn up to introduce a sanitary connection for all 10 of those sinks in those classrooms. We looked at updating the middle school science areas. That's over here. They're from 1991. Built as a middle school, now it's an intermediate school, so you probably don't have as much of a need for chemical-resistant countertops. That's a subjective call if you think it should be replaced or not. It's something that obviously everybody can talk about whether it's a priority or not. The purple area is the IMC, replacing the carpet in there and then also upgrading the furniture and having lower shelving. Like this, there's some of them that are very tall, probably hard to supervise students in that IMC. Also looked at replacing some cafeteria tables and opening up for extra passage out the south end of that cafeteria. And as well, we also included ceilings and flooring. If you're going to be opening it up and replacing the tables, we also included ceilings and flooring, and that just it's a commonly used space central to the building. Again, just something it's due to be replaced because it's a VCT and quite old ceilings. In the lower right-hand corner, the southwest corner of the building, are adding walls where there isn't one now, so that 2 classrooms can truly have private conversations and have their own dedicated class space. And adding a wall by the art room storage, separating that from this area is the old tech ed room, and that is Lisa had wanted to bring the OTPT classroom out of the science prep room and into that much larger space that they could use. We are also showing a new bathroom group in this gym lobby that could be used for, obviously all the functions of the gym, chair storage, changing room for refs, a shower in that area as well as replacing the gym bleachers and adding up a bleacher, a divider net between there for cross court when 2 courts are being used for volleyball or practice. And then also upgrading the music area with is an older platform, non-ADA compliant ramp and carpet in that area, so probably putting in a hard surface for flooring, but then adding more acoustics in there, because right now it's very poor acoustics in that room. And then there was several egress doors out the east and west that really aren't needed. Replace those doors and then fill in with a window wall system. High school, a lot more green, newer building. Some yellows because it was designed, almost 30 years ago and built. The one red area is just, again, you don't have any wiggle room, flexible learning space, breakout space. There's really no pockets for students to collaborate with outside the classroom. Students usually come in this room for that purpose, and it works well because it's kind of central to most of the classrooms. Again, if enrollment does decline, that is an opportunity to introduce some of those spaces and use some of those for swing spaces or flexible learning spaces. But otherwise, what you would expect. I'll go through this pretty quickly. I'll work at the main entrance and kind of work clockwise to Gym Fitness Edition that's shown there. Privacy issue with some cubbies. As you come in right off reception, there's some cubbies where if students need to see the principal or need some discipline, they need to see a principal. Moving them further away from your reception area where guests are for their privacy and respect. So moving that further back in where the teacher lounge is. In the IMC here, looking at updating the furniture in here, lowering the shelving, and I never want to say eliminate volumes, but at upper levels you do tend to do more e-reading. So working with, we've got a budget to upgrade the furniture and shelving in this room if that was desired. This little purple area right off this room right over here was an opportunity to introduce two single-user toilets. Most of the toilets in the building are generally used by staff, and so we just looked at a location that was common. You wouldn't take away from classroom space. That's an IT area that would be a great spot if you wanted to add more single-user toilets in the building. In the auditorium, there is a measure to upgrade the carpeting, lighting, AV curtains, video, stage floor, etc. We had a dedicated meeting of like 8 people talking about all the uses of that auditorium and how much it's being used. We also have a budget, or we have a plan that shows an addition for dressing rooms. That was a huge thing when you've got so many people that all need to change at once, up to, I don't know how many, there were like hundreds of kids that between the dance recitals. So that was one area that they usually have to jump into classrooms to use to change. Middle school band. Right now the door is right across from the construction lab. This was probably a very low priority because it was just recently remodeled, but introducing a single separate entrance to the band area and renovating some of the old tech ed storage areas that are probably being used for practice areas, but that was a measure probably more so for privacy and dedicated, tubas competing with band saws, and usually the band saws win. So that was one measure that we had listed there. Here, again, on the same tour when we walked through and looked at the auditorium, each of the labs had different needs. In the woods area, which is the one to the left here, that one, the spray room is too small. It needs improved ventilation. It needs more power drops in that lab as well, not only in the lab but also the classroom. In auto, it has a single lift that does not work well, and there's 2 stalls, so replacing the old one and adding another one, a new lift that both could, work on more vehicles in that auto area. And then also a upgraded vehicle exhaust system. It should be working well, especially when students are involved with vehicle emissions. And then in the corner is where welding and metals and ag share a space. And it's difficult for the teacher in the auto lab would also have to supervise the welding area. So we've got a plan that kind of moves welding over and gives ag its own space and provides better supervision. And more welding spots was also requested as well. Moving over this way, I think the one desire was to for the safety and to provide more student opportunity was to expand the weight room. That was one thing that we spent quite a bit of time looking at. And after some compromise, one thing we did look at was taking over the maintenance storage room right here. And what would have to be sacrificed would be some coaches and some toilet rooms adjacent to the maintenance area. So that's the first step to how you could expand this weight room. It's not perfect because there are some stairs here, so you definitely it wouldn't be an entire new room, but there would probably be a need for cameras and probably a supervision point right there to see both spots if one staff was trying to supervise kids in both areas. And then the next slide will show some other options. This was one of two options that show how you could add a 2-station gym and a fitness center connected so that the students that exit from the locker rooms could use a common corridor out to the entry or exit point there. And then this fitness center is quite a bit larger, 3 times as large as the fitness center, and it probably has to be that large because your fitness center right now, with all the opportunities that students, not only for PE, but also teams need to use, it's very undersized. And then this was an option to provide the 2-section court, bleachers, and a walking track along the outside of it. We also looked at, can you eliminate the walking track, bleachers, tighten this up, and then maybe provide some other opportunities elsewhere, whether it's the stadium or dressing rooms for the auditorium. This is a site concept of how that fitness center and keeping your existing drop-off pickup would work and kind of separating the flows. And we had also, we had heard that with the 7th and 8th graders on the site that there needs to be more either green space or asphalt, whatever this wants to be, and providing your bus lot there is very oversized and it doesn't use as much as the asphalt as it needs. So this was a way to provide a compromise that some of the space could be taken over for student use, for recess for the 7th and 8th graders. Meanwhile, keeping a dedicated entrance for the bus area here, and then kind of a small improvement here for exit and entry for the parking lot area. This is another option that we looked at. We had presented the gym option to the administrative team, and then they started thinking about the UW-Platteville campus next door. How could you, if you were to purchase the property, how could you introduce a field house and provide another area and somehow, there's some, why build it when there's some underutilized facilities right next door. So we did look at that as well, and we have a budget for that, and provide enough parking, fire lane around the building, and this would be probably a turfed area, fitness center, and toilet facilities, shower facilities for that, basically a field house, standalone field house. Next steps.
Great. So with all that information that you just got, this is kind of some financial projections that were given by Baird. So if you're looking at like a $2.5 million operational potential referendum, that would be tax neutral. And then also what you could go up to, so look at scenario 0 there if you can see it. You could go up to almost $10 million in capital or in bond referendum that would be tax neutral as well because of all the defeasance you've done. So that's the base option is 10 million of different things that Brian just talked about and a $2.5 million operational. And then if you look at like scenario 1, that is doing kind of $20 million worth of work in your 3 buildings. On a $100,000 property, that is about $5 a month. And then it just goes up from there for the 200,000 and 300. In scenario 2, basically the difference between 2 and 3, when we looked at the options, why it's 28 and not 30, it takes 40 has the new the new gym edition on it with the fitness center. 28 does not have that on there. So that is kind of the difference between scenario 2 and 3. And as you can see, on a $100,000 house with scenario 2, it is $9.17 per month for both. And then the scenario 3 is $15 a month on a $100,000 house. So does that make sense on all that? Yeah. So we kind of just put together like some potential options. Like if you decided to do scenario 1 with like the $20 million, that would get you air conditioning at the primary and intermediate. It would get you the emergency and technical system upgrades throughout the district, lighting and power improvements, the high priority windows and roofing, as well as asphalt and traffic improvements. The toilet room upgrades with some of the ceiling work, as well as some of the classroom wall maintenance at the primary and intermediate. Whatever. The next option, you would get the air conditioning as well. Some of the interior and exterior door replacements, as well as flooring. Additional parking at the intermediate is included in this one. The classroom sink and casework upgrades at primary and intermediate. At the high school, the auditorium, tech ed, and weight room improvements. That was the base weight room one, the one that Brian talked about. And then also some classroom furniture upgrades throughout the district. And then, like I mentioned before, the $40 million ads, it's all the other stuff that we talked about before. But also includes the fitness center and 2-section gym addition at the high school. So this is just kind of a milestone schedule. We were here on October 19th where we met with the Buildings, Property, and Transportation Committee. And then tonight, obviously, we are presenting to the school board. Next steps would be the school board meeting on the 27th, like Steve mentioned, would be to, if you decide to move forward with the community survey, that would be where you approve that. I'll kind of go into that a little bit here in a second. In December, that survey would take place. It would conduct a district-wide random sample survey to gather data, and I really think you'd come back with data on what the tax tolerance is, how much are people willing to pay, what is the high priorities of the community, what means a lot to them, and it would give you a lot more data that you could make the decision on what to move forward with. And then probably right away in January, you would need maybe a board work session to kind of fine tune once you get the results of the community survey, with a school board meeting right around January 8th to review the draft referendum resolutions, and then a potential special board meeting. You would have to approve, if you decided to move forward with an April referendum, you have to do the resolution by January 24th. So that's where these dates kind of line up with. So the survey, it's a Morris Leatherman survey. They sample 400 random people throughout the district. The results come back within plus or minus 5%. And we've had very, very good luck with the phone surveys versus the ones that you send out. And the reason is they hit the demographics better. So when you send out a paper one, you could have one group that, all the 30 to 50-year-olds, they sent it in, and no one from the rest of the district sent them in. So it's a very one-sided type of survey. If you do the calls, as soon as they hit they'll hit all your little townships. They'll kind of take a percentage of how much of your population lives in those townships, and then they'll make that percentage of calls to try and hit those people. They'll also try and hit, the different age groups. It basically gives you a much more random, but demographic study, basically. It really hits the demographics and comes back with good data. And we've had a lot of good luck with the Morris Leatherman survey. So, and I don't get anything from it. I really don't. So I just have had good luck with the districts that have used it. If you decide to use a different one, that is totally fine too. The average interview time is between 5 and 10 minutes. And the crazy thing is, I don't know how they do it, but they do get people to sit and talk to them for a long time. They've been doing this for years. They know what they're doing. They have the cell phones and the landlines, so they are able to get a hold of people either way. It's a 50-question survey. And then, like I said, you get the detailed demographic analysis. So with that, if you decide to move forward with a referendum, we can do as much or as little in the support. We have a marketing team, so we can do the tours. We help with the tours, we help with the mailers, we help with videos, we help with a website. Anything that you want to use for your district, we can help you get there. So in summary, you definitely, you have a comprehensive plan. We'll hand out the books tonight. Deferred maintenance, operational efficiency, and modernizing your learning areas. Your local school taxes are very comparable to your neighbors. It's an affordable plan to provide better learning environments for your students. And why now? Honestly, the needs are there. Avoid interest rates going up and inflation. I mean, inflation is real. How much it went up with COVID is ridiculous. And so, and it just keeps going up. So it's only going to get more expensive from here. So with that, do you have any questions that I can answer?
I have a question. In the timeline, does the marketing piece happen, does that come before people are going to get phone calls? Just so, I think the community being aware of.
We can, yeah, we definitely can work with you on that, and it's not a terrible idea. To send out like a mailer.
Just something.
Yep, so that they know it's coming. Yep.
Yeah, 50 questions seems like a lot.
And it is, but when you think of a lot of them, and I can get you a copy of like the draft so you guys can all look that over. A lot of them are like, what's your age? How long have you lived in the district? They're very basic ones so that they know the demographics. And then they kind of get into different priorities and tax tolerance. So a lot of them go really quick.
Okay, and then my last question was, I don't know that I followed the gymnasium. So from option 2 to option 3 being the most expensive, where does the gym at the campus fit into that?
That's the difference between, so in option 2, it's not in there at all. In option 3, it was that addition. It's about a $12 million addition, is based, if that helps.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Brian, I think you were going to jump in. Do you want to touch on this, actually two $40 million?
You were talking about the gym addition versus the field house. Yes.
Yes.
So the issue with the field house is we have a budget to do that, but there's also the acquisition of the land that we don't have yet. So it's hard to quantify. If the two were equal, I think the Platteville campus addition makes a lot of sense because there's already a community tie and investment there. But I think, Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's probably a little early to say which is higher or lower. Right now it's lower, but we haven't figured in the acquisition of the existing buildings and the property yet.
Correct, yeah, and just to kind of clarify that, just for the board and the public, this is just an idea that what if the school were to acquire the gym, the field, the basketball, tennis courts, and Simons, not the entire campus. And if, we could work with the county and somehow acquire that at little or no cost, but we were to do the upgrades, run Simons through our community service fund so that we provided some stability to the community and keeping Simons here and eliminate that question. That was kind of where that idea originated from. So,
So then just to clarify a little bit more, if we would acquire the campus property, that plan of expanding the gymnasium and the fitness room out from the existing gym area, that wouldn't happen?
Correct.
It would transition over to
That's
the
correct.
Right now, we show them as option A, let's see, B or C. You likely would not do both. You could do both, but the plan right now is either one.
I don't think there's a need for both. Any other
I have a statement and a question. One, Mr. Board, you had mentioned in a previous meeting when we discussed this at committee, the interesting thought of if we did have Simons, what that could mean from a curriculum standpoint, that essentially every one of our students could know how to swim, and how that could kind of, just an interesting tidbit of add-on benefit. Question, let's say April comes around, there is a vote, the vote is affirmative. How soon before everything in said option is completed?
I would say 2026, like end of year 2026. If it passed in April, just to kind of give you an idea, I would say design takes like 6 months. So then you could bid in potentially the fall, early winter, with construction starting in the summer of 25. But it would really depend on what you decided to move forward with. So if it wasn't one of the bigger, additions or anything like that, you might be able to get it all done in 25. But if you did an addition with a bunch of renovations, I would say it's safer to say 2026.
With the plan as it is, knowing that you can build something today and it's outdated tomorrow, how much of this is future looking for potential, especially knowing that right now we're in a declining enrollment scenario, but with the technology for, with computers and all those kinds of the wiring versus the actual structural upgrades,
Yeah.
how much of that comes into play?
Do you want to answer that one?
Yeah, we're dealing with quite a few districts in the Minnesota, Wisconsin. We're bidding them right now, and the cabling is a great one, because right now your Cat 5e, the proposals do it to Cat 6. You would greatly expand your bandwidth, even by having less students. That's still a great idea. So forecasting out what's a classroom going to look like in 2030, we get asked, we think about that, and you only know as much as you do, but flexibility and not building in anything, being as flexible as you can with any improvements, and weighing out what's the best, big, better, best scenario, and what's what the budget can afford. We can look at all those, but ideally, yeah, we're dealing with that in every district, from security to classrooms and athletics.
And then also, if I missed it, I apologize. For here at the high school, having walking paths and ADA access to the softball field, to the baseball field, plus the JV field, and then the field extended beyond that, was that included to have actual sidewalk or walkway paths?
There was the two items that kind of went hand in hand were, one was making sure your path down to the stadium is ADA compliant, and then we also had a path down to track and field for ADA path. I'm pretty sure that I thought there was already an ADA path for the softball, but if somebody thinks there isn't, we can definitely add that. But we definitely have the report that'll note that.
Does that also extend to the JV baseball field that goes beyond the varsity baseball field? Because right now it's
Yes.
grass. That's
Yes. Yep, that is on the site plan.
And then the last piece is sidewalk. Maybe this is a city thing. Having sidewalk that extends down to the highway, is that included in the plans, or is that city?
We talked about that, and the city owns right up to the intersection.
City owns Hive Drive. I'm working with the city to try to get that as part of a Safe Routes to School grant. And with those folks, that's not necessarily part of this. So to answer that question, no, it's not part of this.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All
One
right.
that I wrote down, I forgot.
Do we want
We
to
didn't
just?
include anything with the partner school.
No.
Is that looked at? Is that a potential add-on to make sure that our future needs for the partner school are included, or is that a separate?
We did not have them conduct a facilities assessment. I don't know if you guys got a chance to walk through it at all.
East Hall.
East Hall?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was brought up right as we were ending our audits, so it was looked at from a civil and building exterior standpoint. We did not have an architect or electrical or mechanical go through the building. Your three main school buildings were kind of the priority. We could definitely follow up on that if that's a need down the road, if you don't go in April, or even if you are going to go, we can pull something together pretty quickly.
Yeah, one of the things that, well, one, we just acquired it, but two, that is still kind of taking shape on what that's actually going to look like. So in terms of, sure, fire alarms and infrastructure and those things certainly should be looked at or could be looked at. But as far as any alterations or anything like that, I'm not even sure that we know at this point what we really want that to be, as that's kind of taking shape. So then-
We have 10 reports, we'll just leave them over here for you guys.
Perfect,
Okay.
thank you. Then to just kind of wrap up, and some of the things I want the board to then think about as we move into 2 weeks from now and actually having a little bit more of a discussion, what referendum looks like and things like that. Okay, so first of all, they had shared some tax impact and said that we could do a $2.5 million operational and a $10 million capital and have zero tax impact. The tax rate would stay at $9.12, okay? And then it would kind of go up from there, $2.5 million, 20, $2.5 million, 28, $2.5 million, 40. Keep in mind that that's a sliding scale. So if we say we don't need $2.5 million operational, and maybe that drops down to 1.5, that would free up some capital, right? And so those are two separate questions, and we could ask two questions in a calendar year. You could ask one question in April, one question in November. You can ask two questions in April. You can ask two questions in November. But you can't ask two questions in April and then go back in November if something fails, okay? So the idea, and you've heard me say this before, is, if this is going to be a referendum about people, property, and programming being the opportunities that we offer students in our district, people being the staff that we have, and then the property, making sure that we have, adequate facilities. One of the things that the board needs to consider and ask themselves and have a discussion about on the 27th is, does this referendum need to be a Band-Aid? Let's get by and let's do it as fiscally responsible and as minimal as we possibly can with the high priority things only, whatever the board deems that to be high priority. Or is this going to be a referendum that puts us in a really good position financially and property-wise for the next 10 years, right? We are facing a declining enrollment. We could get by with something like a $1 million recurring referendum, okay? That would free up some more more capital. But if we trim that down to 1 million, we have to face the ESSER positions that are looking at being decreased. We have to somehow figure out how are we compensating hourly employees the $3 raise that we gave them for with ESSER dollars. We have some ESSER staffing in terms of a second nurse and a marketing communications director that we have included in there. We have, I lost my train of thought. We have other staffing needs. We've kind of focused on this 66th percentile, right? Do we want to be one of not only a good paying district, but do we want to be the top paying district as it relates to the people in our district? Do we want to have the best educational opportunities for our district? Do we want some of the better facilities in our district? When we built this facility in 1996, we were the top facility from a fine arts and an athletic standpoint, certainly after 2000 when we built the athletics in our conference. By the end of next year, we will certainly be 5th in the conference. All the other schools in our conference have done upgrades. We're no longer there. And you've heard me say that we want to be the district of envy. At some point, if we're going to be the district of envy, we have to have some envious things. And so I want the board to think about where do we want to go with a referendum, if any, right? Now, we've been doing defeasance, so we have an opportunity to be able to do something without any tax increase. But where do we want to be? And that's something the board will have to decide. What do we want to ask from a question standpoint? Is this the referendum that's going to put us in a great position for the next decade? Is this the referendum that gets us by, so that ultimately the stakeholders in our community can answer that question for us? So it's just, that's kind of what I spoke to the buildings and property. I can answer any of those questions, but really I want you to think about where we want to take this, because in November, as we start to decide, do we want a survey? So the first question is, are we going to go to referendum in some fashion? If we are, then are we going to hire Morris Leatherman to conduct a survey to find out what people want, right? And then as we gather that data, then we have to determine what does this look like, so we can determine what questions we may or may not ask in January for an April referendum. Did I miss anything from buildings and property? You guys probably got the biggest spiel in terms of what this looks like. Okay. If you have questions or if you need more information on anything, please let me know between now and the 27th, keeping in mind that, we do have a Thanksgiving break in there as well, so as things come out, hoping to spend some time away from school. So my point is sooner rather than later. Thank you, and thanks to
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ellie and Brian.
Agenda item 5, minutes 5A. Is there a motion to approve prior meeting minutes? So moved. October 9th, 2023. Motion by Mr. Beeline. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Ms. Troxel. Discussion. Mr. Beeline.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, is there a motion to approve prior meeting minutes from October 30th, 2023?
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Bailey. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second is Mrs. Wertz. Discussion. Ms. Troxel.
Aye.
Abstain. Aye.
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 On to agenda item 6, financial items. 6A, approval of statement of cash.
I move we approve the statement of cash dated November 8th, 2023.
Motion made by Mr. Dowdna. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Troxel. Mr. Bosworth, do you have anything that you'd like to add?
A few things to point out on this statement of cash for you. First of all, you'll see that the general community first account drew down, just gradually taking money out for operations. Maybe on the 5th line down, ESSER funds, you see a positive about $800,000. We transferred that over so that we could get the total of that account up to $2.4 million that we've referred to a few times. And that's the dollar value we want to try to spend down this year. So that's 2.4 plus a little bit of interest that's been earned to this point. And then the last account there, it says ESSER earmark funds. We have to clean up the name of that. That's not what that is. But that $150,000 is part of the deposit towards the sale of Jefferson that's sitting and waiting there.
Discussion. Mr. Dowdna?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, on to 6B, approval of invoices.
I move we approve Community First Bank General Checking Account checks number 85684 through number 85794, ACH number 232400374 through 232400522, and EFT number 202300006 through 202300015, for a net total of $1,133,945.29. This is for the purpose of general operating costs of the district.
Motion was made by Mr. Dowdna. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Huntemer. Mr. Bosworth, anything you'd like to add?
Couple things. You'll notice that Mr. Dowda listed some EFT numbers. This is the first time we've had EFTs included on here. We've done EFTs in the past. An EFT is essentially an ACH. It's just an ACH is a group of them that goes bank to bank. An EFT is any time you transfer money between two electronic entities. We've done EFTs in the past, but in the business office we've classified them as checks. We're doing some discussions with other folks in the industry, and we're trying to do some better practices, and they're telling us we should just keep these things classified as EFTs. So it's not anything new, it's just kind of a different classification that's on that memo. And then as far as all the different things going on, nothing really to point out. Maybe just note there's a lot of stuff going on. Of course, we missed one board meeting in there, so that makes the number go higher. But no real big expenditures, just a lot of smaller day-to-day stuff. If you spend some time looking through there, you get a flavor for all the things that we spend money on when kids are around.
Discussion? Mr. Hunter?
Aye.
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 Right, on to agenda item 7. Mrs. Coleman, consent agenda items.
Motion to accept the donation of money valued at approximately $200 from Jones Chevrolet Incorporated per policy 7230. Motion to accept the donation of money to Partners for Prevention valued at approximately $136 from Richland Hospital per policy 7230. Motion to accept the donation of snack basket items and gift cards for students and staff at RCHS valued at approximately $400 from Community First Bank per policy 7230. Motion to accept the donation of mini pumpkins to RCPS valued at approximately $975 from Hitch Farm per policy 7230. Motion to accept the donation of snack basket items and gift cards for students and staff valued at approximately $400 from Community First Bank per policy 7230. Motion to accept the donation of kitchen items valued at approximately $23.50 from Family Thrift Shop per policy 7230. Motion to accept the donation of a television screen valued at approximately $100 from the Clarkin family per policy 7230. Motion to accept the donation of $500 to our CPS art program from Crawford County Tourism Council per policy 7230. Motion to accept the donation of funds for musical scripts valued at approximately $2,284.24 from RSD Foundation per policy 7230. Motion to approve the revised job descriptions as presented.
Thank you, Mrs. Coleman. Is there a motion to accept the consent agenda items?
I'll make it.
Motion made by Mr. Hunter. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Mrs. Wertz. Discussion? Mrs. Wertz?
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
On behalf of the Board of Education, I would like to thank Jones Chevrolet, the Richland Hospital, Community First Bank, the Hitch Farm, Family Thrift Shop, the Clarkin family, Crawford County Tourism Council, and the RSD Foundation for their generous gifts and donations. Is there a motion to approve modified agenda?
So move.
Motion, Mr. Dillon, is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Ms. Troxel. Discussion? Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Right, on to agenda item 9, information and discussion items. 9A, district transfers and vacancies.
Okay, so just a couple of things. On the support staff PDF, we've got 3 openings, a cross-cat aide, a night custodian, and a cook. All of those are posted, accepting applications and/or in the interview process for those. And then on the certified staff, we have the occupational therapist. I mentioned this before, that we do have a plan. We're contracting with CISA 3 and the Richland Hospital and Clinics to meet those needs, but we do still have it listed. Hope that we can maybe get somebody. Art is also still listed. Both of those, I anticipate us taking that down after Thanksgiving, giving it a little bit of a break, and then probably looking at reposting as needed as we get into the 24-25 hiring season. And then also the school counselor at the high school, that posting just closed, and so we'll be conducting interviews for that in the near future. Any questions on any transfers and vacancies?
Okay. On to agenda item 10, action items, 10A, 2023-24 bus routes.
So the bus routes for this year need to be approved annually by the board. This went to our Buildings, Property, and Transportation Committee earlier. They reviewed the bus routes. The bus routes are there in the PDF. We are running 20 routes, 14 regular education and 6 special education routes for morning routes. And we are running 19 routes, 14 and 5 for the afternoon routes. It's likely due to the STING program, just not having quite as many kids to transport home as we do getting them to school. All of the routes are within our district policies and our timelines for the policies. We have a 70-minute on the bus time, but remember that as per our policy, that 70 minutes starts and stops from the time that we enter or leave the city limits. So if a student is on the bus for, say, 55 minutes in rural, and they enter the city limits, then that timer stops. It is possible that they could still be on the bus for an additional, say, 20 minutes as we stop at the high school, stop at the other building before they finally get to their final destination. So it is possible that students could be on the bus for longer than 70 minutes, but I'm just making sure that you're aware of what our policy states and when that 70-minute time starts and stops. So, any questions on our bus routes that we have? We're always looking to analyze that. Cobeson is working closely with us, and it's been great to work with as they typically are. All right, we need to approve that for our annual approval.
Is there a motion to approve the 2023-24 bus routes as presented?
I'll make the motion.
Motion made by Mr. Dowden. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second, Mr. Huntemer. Discussion. Mr. Bailey.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. On to 10B, policy 1400 job description revision.
So 1400 talks about job descriptions, and the revision that we're recommending in the PDF there, it's at the top of the second page in green. The job descriptions were to be reviewed, or excuse me, there was not a time in there that it needed to be reviewed. The policy committee wants to make sure that we don't end up in a situation where we have job descriptions that are a decade or longer, old. And so they've got in there that they will be reviewed at least every 5 years, so no more than 5 years. However, the recommendation from the policy committee is that this policy be effective on July 1st, 2024. That will allow the policy committee, and the personnel committee as well, to review the job descriptions and make sure that all of them are within 5 years without being basically out of compliance with our own policy. So that'll essentially give us through the 24-25 school year to do that if we have it effective July 1, 2024. Policy committee, did I miss anything there?
Is there a motion to approve the revision to policy 1400 job descriptions as presented, effective July 1st, 2024?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Bailey. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second, Mrs. Wertz. Discussion? Ms. Troxel?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
10C, change in 23-24 staffing at RCHS.
Okay, so this is a request, it's really a technicality more than anything. If you remember, we had a 60% art position that we were unable to fill. We were able to get these students their art requirements through overloads. The board had approved a certain number of overloads, 2 overloads in particular for the entire year to accommodate this. We have a plan in place where all of that can happen. However, in order for that to happen, one of the positions to cover the GED program would technically not be considered an overload. It would be filled with a retired teacher, okay? And so that teacher would be a part-time teacher, not an overload. It's budget neutral, but it doesn't qualify as an overload because they're not 100% to begin with. So we're asking that we take the money that we had allocated to be reserved for overloads to be shifted into hiring a GED teacher, which is essentially a part-time teacher. So again, money neutral, but this person would not be hired on an overload. It's truly a teaching position. That make sense? So that's the ask, relatively budget neutral.
Is there a motion to approve the hiring of a GED 02 teacher for the second semester of the 23-24 school year?
I'll make that motion.
Motion made by Ms. Troxel. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Mrs. Wertz. Discussion? Mr. Dowden?
Aye.
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 All right. 10D, the ECCP request for January 2024.
So the board has seen this usually a couple times a year for the upcoming semester. This would be for the spring semester of 2024. There's a chart in your board docs there that kind of shows when the district is responsible for a course and when the student is on the hook for the course. Essentially, if the district offers a comparable course, we would still, as a district, allow the student to take it, but the pupil would pay 100% of that tuition. If there is no comparable course and it fills a graduation requirement, then the student would not have to pay any of that tuition. The district would pay 75% of it, and the state would reimburse us for the other 25% of it. And then there's a breakdown there where the pupil pays 25% if there's no comparable course and it does not fill a graduation requirement. It's just something that the student wants to take above and beyond a graduation requirement. And then below that chart lists a plethora of different courses and names of students who are looking to take those courses. I would say that while it's an extensive list, there are several alternates listed in there as well. Students can only take 2 courses, and so if they have 3 or 4 listed, they want to have those courses approved in case their original courses are filled by the colleges or they change their mind and take a different course instead of their originally intended course. Usually it's the first. Usually the course that they want is filled by the college, and therefore they want to take something else. So, but students would be limited to 2 courses. And it's very similar to what we've seen in the past.
So then with that, just noticing that Mr. Muckler is 4 different courses listed, but 2 of them are not marked as alternate.
Yeah, he wouldn't
So it's
necessarily have listed which ones are alternates, but he would still only be able to take 2.
Okay, thank you.
Is there a motion to approve ECCP courses as presented for the 2024 spring semester?
I'll make that.
Motion made by Mr. Huntemer. Is there a second?
Second?
Second made by Mr. Bailing. Discussion? Mr. Huntemer?
Aye.
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 Okay, I'll make a motion. We move into closed session pursuant to section 19.851 C, E, and/or F, and of the Wisconsin statutes 118.125 to consider employment, promotion, compensation of employees, discussing individual employee hiring and administrator evaluations, and to discuss student open enrollment, applications, and individual pupil information related to those applications. The board may take action on these issues in closed session if necessary and appropriate. At the conclusion of closed session, the board will entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Mrs. Wertz. Discussion? Mrs. Wertz?
Aye.
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 Aye. Thank you.